So welcome to Precision Golf for today's fitting. Graham's back in with us, looking at the top end of the bag. So we've done the irons a few weeks back, and then going to round off the top end and see. Have we got any relics at the top of the bag this time?
They're all relics, just given to me to like trying to be a bit of a cheapskate, just taking hand-me-downs from brothers, etc.
It all works.
Yeah, but this one, distance is all I'm really, driver, all I'm caring about. I don't get any enjoyment from the hit-soft drivers now compared to the irons, so just as many yards as you can give me.
Right, well that's pretty direct as an instruction, so off we go. Let's see how many yards we can get.
Awesome.
Yes, MP630, that was one of the first ones to have movable weight track on the sole. So something that we take for granted now with a lot of the models now, which is the movable weights. But this was the first we could put both in the toe, or both in the heel, or both back. So
you're not surprised they have not moved since.
it used to be when the like with TaylorMade the R7, when the weights first came out, everyone wanted the wrenches and everyone wanted to move around and test around. Now people don't even want the wrench. They just say, look, if I want something doing, I'll come back, you do it, and I'm not touching them. So it's,
that is me.
Yeah.
That is me.
So generally speaking, as you mentioned, distance obviously the key focus. Actually, which ball are we using today?
So Pro V1.
Is relative with that one from a ball flight, from an overall point of view. Is there anything standout performance with this that you're finding, be it from a ball flight point of view or shot shape pattern?
So I always have a little draw.
Yeah.
So my mistake has been, which is just being a bit silly, I was just having my iron swing. So I had a very weak sort of pop-up flight.
Yeah.
It carried sort of like 220, 230, 240.
Yeah.
And then sort of a couple of years ago, someone said, look, you've got to try and hit up on the ball. With the motor. And then I started hitting it longer, but the swing is not quite dialed in yet. So as in, if I just want to pop up 240, then I'll go back to my iron swing. But I'm trying to get that upward angle of attack now to get those extra.
Is it just that picture swing rather than the shaper swing? It's more just
so the shape is exactly the shape is exactly the same. I'm just trying to exaggerate putting it forward, the sort of left shoulder a little bit. It feels weird to me, but I'm just trying to get that ingrained a little bit in there.
Got it. Okay, lovely.
So
T height, if it wanted it a little lower, the top of the screw, just go clockwise to screw it down a bit, or higher anti-clockwise, and it'll come up a little bit. So
is that up, down?
Yeah, so setup wise, the Active Red, so the Active series, the red was the more tip stiff one. And so the red tip stiff one, I think the red was the more tip stiff one. And the 69, they did play pretty much bang on the 69 weight, maybe in the X-Flex, just about creeping over 70, but
so weight wise, sorry, it's 60.
Weight wise, it's pretty much bang on the 70 gram mark. You're pretty stout. It's a little shorter than vertical standard now, just under 44 and a half. Swing rate pretty neutral, so just more the length of it's a little shorter than where we'd currently be as standard.
Okay. That's the normal shape.
Okay.
The
looks like T might have just popped out a little bit with that hit. Looks a little higher than where it was before. So does that just come out? Does the T just come out a little bit?
No, I put it up.
Yeah.
Sorry, I put it up. What was the angle of attack on that? Because that's
2.8 up. So it doesn't need to be any more than that for sure.
So in terms of, I'll just show quick. So this is what I was doing for a while, for too long.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So 4 down. So yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to.
I mean, to have made that kind of change, that's a really good change. So without the swing shape being massively affected as well, which is good.
So if I lost all confidence in trying to do the hit up, I'll go back to that to just sort of
just a fairway find.
Yeah. To pop it back up.
quick look at slight point there. Okay.
This is the accuracy is definitely
And do you
not
find
there yet.
Is flight height pretty high with this?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
There's
yeah.
a bit of
yeah.
it's a bit as I'm trying to change for the up.
Yeah.
It's going a little bit all over the place
Yeah.
compared to if I had that downward. I know exactly where it's.
Yeah, I must admit, you kind of looking at that swing, it looked like a very reliable move, certainly, and that's sort of one of the difficult bits. But actually, I mean, pathwise is actually interesting. When you hit it down, you get a little more from the inside. It's almost like a low punch draw kind of move.
Yeah.
And the high ones are margin a little bit out to when you hit up on it, but that's I think where you're working up and round a little bit more. So, but you've got plenty of angle of attack there, 2.5 degrees. So you certainly don't have to. I mean, the last one's only 0.7 of a degree out to in, so it's as good as dead square. Right. So you certainly don't have to take that angle of attack any further.
Okay.
I'll see one or two more with that.
Because there's a bit of just, you know, if playing on the coast or whatever, just trying to hit it low, but you're not winning any awards for hitting it 220, 230.
And the thing is now, actually, where the balls spin, so I always used to, on links, flight it down a lot, but where the balls used to spin more, that helped. But now the balls spin less. Actually, you can lose too much carry if you take it down too much.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So as long as the spin's in low 2000s, it's not getting that affected by the wind. Okay, you don't want it moonballing, but equally speaking, you don't have to take flight down as much as you think. As long as the spin's in a good window, it's going through the wind.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so a lot of the time, I now won't. Instinct is to change flight because it's just years worth of memory.
Yeah, I can just see old members shaking their head.
But you just don't have to change. You don't have to go from, say, a 14 launch to a 7 or 8 launch. You can go from a 14 to a 12, and if the spin goes from 2.5 to 2, that's still going through
the wind.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's a mental.
So to both of us, it's counterintuitive.
Yeah.
It's something that I mentally want to see a different flight, but I have to almost catch myself and stop it.
So does the into the breeze swing fees still apply or not so much?
Yes,
now?
because you don't want to
too much
exaggerate any spin rate, but you don't have to knock the launch angle down as much now as you used to.
Right. Okay.
No, not necessarily. So it's just kind of reaching a little bit. So that's why it's just going to feel a little bit down on the strike. Okay, I think probably in terms of what we're seeing with this, that's enough to know where we're at with it. I mean, it's very high because you've dynamically changed you moved angle of attack best part of 6.5, 7 degrees. Yeah. That's changing your launch angle a heck of a lot. Now, if we look at the one you squeezed and got 4 degrees down, it's launched at 11. So actually the spin to launch isn't too bad based on your angle of attack. But going from that to, like the last one, 3 degrees up, well, there's your 7 degrees of launch angle difference is purely your angle of attack. Yeah. So it's launched literally 6.9 degrees higher. Now, spin proportionally isn't bad, but that, if I put it on optimizer from a flight point of view, and this is carry in total, so this is the higher of them. Okay. So you launch at 18 as opposed to down around the 14 mark. So you're losing ball speed because there's too much energy going up. Okay. And the spin's a little high, so it's stalling a little bit. But you're missing out on 6-7 miles an hour ball speed with a slightly weaker flight, so you're missing out on 25 yards of distance. If I put the flight window into total, which I would say be more of a UK ball flight, certainly more towards a Lynxy ball flight, then it makes that differential even more. So spin into the low 2's great, but we need to get loft down because you're now creating launch with your spin. You don't need the head to get it airborne. Okay. If you're hitting down on it, if I go into the downward strike, you can see where even that's high-ish, but you can see where that launch window is. Yeah. On the downward strike, it's much closer to it.
So I suppose that the bit I'm sort of slightly not confused but don't know is how much of this is just getting the new technique sorted versus how much the driver will help at the same time.
Yeah, I think based on where your ball flight is, if you look at the averages here, it's pretty consistent. You're up at 16.5 on average with a degree tolerance and 3,100 on spin with less than 500 revs tolerance. That is more of a 3-wood spin. Okay. But your delivery, from the driver's point of view, 2.5 up is really good delivery. Right. So it's for getting efficiency of flight is in a good place. Okay. But the best way to describe it, kind of relate it to something. Essentially, there's too much dynamic lofted impact. And so instead of coming out forwards, or kind of up and forwards, it's going up and up. Right. So just the general pitch of flight is, if we look on put it on an average here, we want it to be more like, if we can get it down to 13, but that's 20% lower. If we get 20% less spin, it's still the upper half. Okay. So we need to bring flight down by it's 120 feet as opposed to around 80 to 90. So it's
I mean, that's quite a weak flight as it is just now.
Yeah, but it's not through you. It's not a kind of an action-based weak flight. Okay. In terms of the delivery, actually is very good for creating a upper mid-launch low spin. Okay. So there's nothing stopping you getting efficiency from that delivery. It's not like you're out to an open face, carving across it and scything under it. It's actually everything's going through the line of flight where we want it, but dynamically you're just delivering more loft than we need. Okay. But we can this is where we can really use the head to take the loft down, just get it coming out forwards. Okay.
So the driver can help.
100%, 100%. And this is, and so this is, the likeness would be, this is no different than wearing a pair of shoes the wrong size. As your swing and your delivery is now in a good place, and by getting the right size of shoe, we can stop you getting blisters. We can bring the launch down, we can get that flight down and stop you then having to de-loft with your hands, and because you've made such a good change in delivery, it's so much better for the driver. But now rather than hitting down it in the loft, keeping it in the air and getting you flight, you're now hitting up on it and it's now got too much flight.
So that's with this at 10.5 is too much. Okay.
So what I'm going to do to start with is just I don't want to go silly low spin on the head. We know we need to bring loft down and launch down. I'm just going to go to something that's for neutral spin, but we're going to get the loft right down. Okay. And then use that as a start point, and likewise look at shaft. And certainly we can go a little lighter on the shaft, give you a bit more feel for the head, and that can help to potentially build a little bit of speed. But if I can't get you more yardage, I'm in the wrong job.
Yes. That's all that.
I can 100% say that. so just reducing
music
loft
to the ears.
Gets the flight down, gets it forwards. Don't have to do anything really kind of ridiculous. So I'm going to go to a fairly safe driver head. So not a massively low spin. We'll go to the ping, but in a 9 degree, and we can loft that down a little bit as well. And then going to start down kind of low 60s, a little bit of weight in the bottom end. Just start somewhere pretty kind of neutral from that standpoint and take it from there. So this one's just a start point really. Gone a little bit lighter on shaft, about 10% lighter on shaft. Balance-wise, there's a little bit more in the bottom end. Okay. But more dead weight down. We're up to a kind of standard length. We're back at the 45-inch length. But most importantly, we're now down at a 9 degree turn down a bit rather than the 10.5. Okay. But I've picked the head because it's very mid-launch, mid-spin. Just change the loft first and see what happens. Okay.
And how many yards are you promising me with this one?
Well, as long as by the time we finish, if club speed doesn't change, by the time we finish, there's definitely 20 yards in it. Okay.
No, so it's just getting a better look at the swing, just so we can actually see how everything times up. Oh, it was a safety measure. No, not at all.
So the left to right will work out with the timing and the weight position. So immediately, yes, its face has turned over, but we're down at, still heading up on it and down at 2.2 on spin, 11.5 launch. Okay. So I say if I couldn't change that just with loft, I say if I wasn't able to work that one out, then I need to fire myself.
But the launch was okay.
Well, because the face closed, it's a little flat, but really it's just seeing how much does it come down as we change each variable. Okay. Okay, still a little spot. Let's see one more of that.
I should really have the jumper off, shouldn't I, at this stage for the drivers?
Do the Jack Nicklaus take the sweater off to drive the 18th? That's still one proportionally to time, one of the biggest tee shots that's ever been hit, I think.
Yeah. With a
Persimmon Ballata, yeah. 360. Okay, so timing's not quite, it's getting a little heel side, so we're losing a little bit of the spin efficiency. Launch angle's in a far, far better place. So we're down at 13.5 on that, so that's fine. We're not quite getting the timing, so the strike's not quite there, but launch angle's right down. That first 1K went a little bit left. We're not anywhere near where we need to get to yet, but 250 odd, we're picking up 10 yards from a heel strike, which spins it more and loses ball speed. So I'm going to take shaft weight back up a little bit. It looks just it's not quite there. It's just getting away from me through the ball. But did change it by 6-7 grams. So. Okay.
And how much of that is me as well as a little bit?
Well, if it was purely you'd adjust a little bit more to it. So we want you to be able to kind of free up through it. So where your driver shaft weight is compared to where your iron shafts are, proportionally is nowhere near as heavy. So it's upper half of mid, but it's still within that kind of 60 to 70 gram mid range of inverted commas window. So
it's not as far off as I was with the...
No. So I'm just going to push that weight back up a little bit more.
Okay.
Let's take that up 3 or 4 grams, go back kind of upper half of 60s. So let's round Tom here.
So actually try not to turn through.
Go to that. Let's go to a very well-known shaft in the Ventus. So take that shaft weight back up a few grams. Just wasn't quite enough for you to hit against with that. But what's quite interesting is also seeing there is a consensus that go lighter, you can swing it quicker.
Yeah.
Well, not always, because there's got to be enough to build speed with. So sometimes you can go lighter and actually lose speed because you lose the timing and then you have to find contact again. So actually sometimes you need that little bit of weight to keep building speed with. So sometimes heavier does mean quicker.
So we get to the end of this process and there's a better driver for me, and then obviously the next thing would be to try and get some more swing speed if I really want to push the distance. Would the driver then change again, or would it be...
Not necessarily,
okay?
no. I mean, shouldn't do, because what we can also, as we're testing, we can see where there's still, it still stays with you. It's still, I mean, unless you were to get on some steroids and get in the gym and hulk up, then, because essentially the way your building speed is going to be the same. It's just how far can you go. I mean, you're going to have to work very, very hard to go from, say, 101, 102 to 110. And even then at 110, it's chances are it's still, it might be a little fine-tuned on head weight from a swing weight point of view, just that little bit of timing through impact. But even at those sort of levels, realistically, it's still going to work. It's only if the, I'm trying to multitask miserably, it's only if the way you build speed changes, and then where the mass needs to be could change. So if you were to go and get physically a lot stronger and bulk up, then you're going to use your upper body more, and the levers, the energy into the club changes. If it's just a case of building a little bit more speed within the same framework, the same technique, and the same body essentially, then it's just moving quicker and still moving with you. So 99% of the time, if you're just building another 4 or 5 miles an hour club speed, which is just still 5%, doesn't need to change.
So would that make a big difference if you try to, it'd be a lot of work, to try to go from 101 to 104, would that make much of a difference, or not?
To the club setup, no.
No. And distance-wise, would it make materially
so if you go, so for every mile an hour club speed, ideally 1.5 ball speed. For every mile an hour ball speed, looking at 1.5 yards. So you're looking at, for every mile an hour club speed, looking at about 3 yards. Roughly.
So it wouldn't be
roughly just under 3.
So unless you're adding 3 or 4, it's not a massive
3 or 4 then starts to get you 10 yards. Yeah.
But a lot of work to get to that.
Depending on where you're starting from, you can get it quite quickly. So if you're starting from a low base, then that can come quite quickly, and just through being a little technique balance. But if you've got to fight it to get it there, does it throw off your timing and therefore create more spread? And that's always the kind of the
So once you reach that first plateau, it's probably unless you're...
Depending on how committed you are. Yeah.
Not that much. Not that.
Yeah. Okay, so immediately going a little heavier, the line of the shot's squarer. So face to path, a little heel strike,
yeah.
Face to path's 0.0. So straight away, it's dropped it in a little bit more. So the lighter club, as you swung through, got almost away from you. You got through impact too soon.
Yeah.
That one's dropped in a bit more and squared as you're coming through. So going back up a few grams has helped the line of the swing.
And where does that relate to the original one? Same back to this?
So your original one was a little bit behind you, a little bit fetched, and just dragging over left a little bit. The next one was similar path, but over closing on the face a bit more. Granted, it's one swing, but that's dead square on the face to path. Just got the heel, which got a little bit of fade.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's much better on timing. So first one's always a bit of a sighter because that's, see how it goes. If it goes well, the next one's got more on it, and that stayed with you. So again, rather than path still a hair out to in, but club face to target's squarer.
Okay.
So even though you've put on another mile an hour and a bit of club speed, you've kept contact better, it's kept stability of the club face. It's because the path's a little bit left, it's a little bit of a fade, but we've now basically got you 20 yards and there's still a bit more to go from a ball speed and flight point of view.
Okay. So you don't need to sack yourself? No.
Thankfully not yet, no. We're still, based on that, if I take that swing and we go to, right, where's potential for that swing? There's still another 10 yards or so potential. Because there's still a bit more ball speed to come out of that. There's still a little bit more flight efficiency to get out of that. And that's without you doing anything different. If you put exactly the same swing on, where's strike point on there? Strike point, a little high on the face, so I might bring the tee height down. So bring that strike point down a little bit, ball speed goes up a little bit. It might be a different head, slightly different head shaft combination to optimize that spinner launch, but purely just by getting maximum out of that swing, there's still another 10 yards or so.
So try tee up a little bit?
No, I'll watch one more as is, and then we'll kind of root around a couple of the shafts. But the head's it's solid. I mean, the loft change has made a massive difference to the launch angle.
Okay.
What I like about it straight away, that was the strike that
A little up the left, but still solid. Okay, so that's pretty good. Okay, that's the kind of first good marker point forward. So we've dropped 4 grams or so from your original shaft.
Okay.
And dropped, this is a 9-degree turn down in loft, so we're down really at an 8.5-degree head.
Okay.
So a couple of degrees of loft on the head. I'll keep the head for now. I think we can beat the head, but I'll keep the head for now. I'm just going to test a couple of other shafts surrounding that. So Ventus Blue, slightly kind of lower mid-balance, stable tip, so designed not to be harsh, but to keep the spin down. I'm certainly doing a very solid job with that, but the dead weight and the balance point are working well.
And flex matter really or not?
This one's the stiff. The Ventus plays up in flex from what it states, but it needs to be stable simply because you have a bit of snap through, and if we go to something structured that's not strong enough, it's going to feel a little bit weak, and I think a tighter feel is likely, based on what you've been using, is likely to give you that confidence that you can kind of let the shaft out and the face feels controlled. I think if we go to something more, for want of a better way, responsive feeling, it could feel like you lose the club face a little bit, and then does that lose a bit of trust? Does that get you steering at it a little bit?
Okay, but it's weight first.
100%, yeah, because the weight is the bit that governs whether you and the club head arrive together at impact.
Okay.
The bend profile and the flex are a little bit of ball flight, but also the It's actually confidence. It's the feel aspects of it, the comfort blanket of feeling, all right, I know where the club face is. If you get that, then you're going to trust it and you're just going to let the swing go.
Because everyone gets obsessed with flight. It seems
it's been all that's been talked about for years because it's what was believed to be a dominant feature in terms of control. But an R to an S or an S to an X is 3 to 5% of the bend of the shaft. It doesn't materially affect the face orientation by enough to be the dominant factor in performance. However, the feel element will affect how the player swings. So when we did one of the other videos we've done on flex, I've gone 2 shafts the same weight, same balance point, an X flex and a kind of an A flex essentially, and I have to make myself make the same swing with the A flex as the X because I'm used to a firmer feel. The moment I started down, you could feel it move, and my instinct was to back off it. It's like, oh, I don't know where it's going to go. Now, actually, if you carry on the swing, it makes very little difference to the end result. But it feels like it's going to throw the dispersion.
Which then affects,
and then affects you don't carry on with the swing. So it materially to the numbers isn't important, but to the person swinging it is.
Okay.
So it's going to get a couple of shafts that are similar in terms of weight, balance point, but it's still designed around that lower spin to the Ventus. Onto the good ones to compare against. There's no point me going to something largely irrelevant. We know where we're at in weight because Graeme's original shaft is a few grams heavier, a little bit stuck. We went to 62, which is a few grams lighter, got away from him. We know going back into that middle ground, it's in a good window. It's a nice bright one. What else do I want to go with this? Let's start with these, I think. Yeah, let's start with these.
Tell me kind of how you're finding the experience so far. Is it a bit different from your last time?
Yeah, I think a little bit in terms of just looking at driver and I'm just distances. I don't get as much pleasure out of hitting the drivers and the woods as I do with the irons. Therefore, it's just literally trying to get as much distance as possible. And just, again, I'm learning a little bit about, as I say, the launch monitors, etc. and but needing that sort of extra sort of Simon translator bit, definitely makes a difference. And as I say, if he's promising 20 yards, then I'll take it, no question.
So it's just got the normal size grip back on that rather than the mid size.
Well, if I can have a blue shaft for Scotland as well, it'd be
even better.
An extra bonus.
Yeah, that's not been the reason for picking them, but it can be a nice side result.
Although after the Germany game the other night,
I wasn't going to say anything. You probably would have beaten us in the cricket had that continued. Interesting. I'll watch one more with that. What's interesting is where I pushed the weight back up, it's still not to where your original one is. Pushed it back up another 1 or 2 grams.
Yeah.
And there appears to be a kind of a consistency of once it gets behind, you then play catch up and overdraw it because it's a catapult round.
Okay.
And so some players will pull the handle, open the face up and miss it right. I, like you, the moment it gets behind, that kind of, not correction, but collection of the club head happens and I miss it left.
Which is for me I always hit it just because I'm trying to hit it too hard, that's my...
And so that's just where it gets, and where that's a little heavier, the more you fire, the more separated it gets, and then the quicker the catapult back around. So it's kick, fetch. And so the face becomes quite volatile, whereas if it comes with you, then it stays more stable.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a little bit more of a fetch through, just have to come out of it a little bit more. So it's just
pop the
flight and the spin a little more. So where you've had to collect it, it's just kicked back underneath. Where you've almost had to hold the face from it going left. So,
okay.
Right, let's take the weight back down a couple of grams.
So even that, just gram or two can make that much?
Yeah, I mean, so I know with my own driver, it's a 64 or 65 gram shaft. If I go to 66, doesn't work. It's like my fairway wood. I've dropped the flex down from what was an X flex to an S. Not because of the flex, but because it's 3 or 4 grams lighter. And I was sort of debating whether to put a 5 wood in the bag, and we had a demo that we didn't need anymore. Had a duplicate demo that we didn't need, and it's the X flex versus the stiff. And I thought, well, even though it's going to be shorter, I'm sure that'll be fine. I can't swing it at the heavier weight.
Oh.
It just feels like a sledgehammer. So there are some players that have a wider window to fit within. Almost the more of a snap and a quicker acceleration rate you have, the narrower that window is.
Right.
Because the momentum build-up's sharper and quicker, and therefore exaggerated.
So these guys who are swinging fast, they have a small window then in terms of...
If they have what I call a crack of the whip speed, if it's a snap acceleration, then it's going to be a very narrow window.
Okay.
If it's more of a kind of build up and rip through, then you actually, there's more leverage-wise. If you think if it's a late whip, it's actually a sharper, quicker acceleration rate. Whereas if you're building from the top down, almost a Brighton-esque where you really kind of pulls hard from the top, and it's all kind of built sort of through top. Everything's built through, but it's more, it starts at the top. Then you've got realistically a slightly slower acceleration ratio, whereas if your snap whip, that last snap through, is a little bit of a sharper acceleration.
So who would be the opposite? If Bryson's the one, who would be the...
You get someone like a Fino who's got that whip, or Alvaro Quiros who had that real kind of whip with the hands. That last minute crack of the whip, or Justin Thomas, who's got a real kind of rotation snap from the hips. You've got a later acceleration point. So it becomes a narrower window to fit in.
Yeah, that's why it's going like 50 yards right. Because it's just going to be like that.
And I guess hence that's why I've got the yonex I've got so in.
Yeah, so drop the dead weight down straight away. It's not necessarily better than the shaft 2 shafts ago, but straight away it's back out in front of you a little bit more, and it's yes, it's drawn a little bit, but it's not wrapped over in the same way.
That is my normal, like a shape that a little bit of, that would be my sort of what I think I see most often.
See one more of that. Yeah, much more stable at the slightly less heavy weight. Okay. Okay, I'll get to the other one. That's. So again, what we're seeing, same as with the Ventus, there's a little bit more ball speed to come, and we can get the spin, proportionally the spin down a little bit more, then there's a little bit more run out to be had. But that's easily done with, should be easily done with head. Certainly the spin side of things easily done with the club head.
Okay.
I'll just test this shaft as well. Those are both good.
And in terms of swinging wise, I'm not, because it's still a relatively new swing for me. Is it?
It's good.
Similar
Yeah,
there?
I'm still between degree and a half, 2 degrees up, which is plenty. It doesn't have to be more than that. Club path with the ones that are the right weight, very, very square, with a slightly closing club face. So it's a draw swing, but it's not. As much as I can talk, it's not more than a draw swing. It's not a kind of a wrapping hook. It's something that you could aim, for example, right centre.
Yeah.
And if you square it, it's dead down the middle. If you slightly turn it over, you're left centre.
Okay.
But it's definitely not a volatile face in any shape or form. So.
And those blue lines you were showing, that's the sort of, when they talk about window, that's what they're talking about, is it? Those?
Yeah, so that's based on, TrackMan has a kind of an optimizer based on club speed, angle attack.
Okay.
So that's what, essentially from a flight efficiency point of view, that's the maximum in terms of ball speed you can achieve, and based on that delivery, the optimum launch and spin window for that swing.
Okay.
So, which is, from a fitting tool, it's good to kind of show, right, that this is what's achievable.
Yeah.
Assuming not doing anything kind of based on that swing dynamic, as long as someone's not doing something funky with the club face. But it's a case of saying, right, this is what's doable within the framework of physically how you deliver the club. And then from then there can be some technique work or some optimization that can be done with the club itself, but that gives you your kind of benchmark.
And then you'll get more used to seeing what that looks like.
Yeah.
On the course.
So for you, ball flight, that launch window is going to come right down.
Okay.
We're down at sort of 13, 14 degrees rather than 16.
16.
Yeah, so where we're at, just on or just under 65, swinging wise, very nice in terms of line through. I'm going to go to a head that brings the flight down a little bit more, just because we're consistently a little high in spin and a little short on ball speed. So, and for one that's 0.6 on the path and 0.8 in the face, we can definitely do a little bit better. So I'm just going to switch the head, just because there's no point wasting swings with something we know we can achieve a bit more with.
Okay.
So going to heads that are designed where you can get spin down, but I don't want to lose the sort of forgiveness side of things. And I'm also going to get one of the Titleists as well, because the base loft, if I can find the right head, the base loft is a little bit lower too.
So shaft-wise, this is the same weight?
Same as the last one, just changing the head to see, right, where does that, if we go to one that is designed for a bit less spin, where do we go to in, where does that take us and how far can we push it? Popped a little bit, interesting.
Just a bad shot. It's not a great shot.
Maybe I'm just going to take the tee down for this head in particular, take the tee down a little bit.
Okay.
Just the Callaways generally don't need quite as high a tee as some of the other heads. Ball speed moving a little bit better. Okay, so as a head style, even though the weight's forward, the proportionate spin is not changed that much, but it's actually it's creating a little bit more launch relative to loft, which we don't need. So ball speed actually a little bit better.
Okay.
But it's just popped the launch angle up a little bit too much. So.
And the weight can just do that, can it, in terms of?
And construction, so it's a very, very light crown. So the Callaways, whilst this is a low spin head, I went to this to not knuckle it, but actually the Callaway heads are very good at retaining a little bit of launch.
Okay.
So of the lower spin ones, that's probably one of the safer ones for launch, but for you it's just popping it a little bit too much. So I'll put that one back and I'll get one that can
And the swing was generally not hugely different to
fine,
me.
you're 1.5 up, dead square on the path, fractionally open on the face, but not enough to be, not enough to be a worry. I mean, still, it's fine, but again, we can easily get that flight down. So let's just switch the heavyweight to the front on this one to bring that spin down a little more. Going to the Cobra head. So again, not going too exaggerated on head style yet. There's still lower spin heads than the 430 Max. Will certainly be interesting to see where the LS goes to on the ping. That'll definitely be one of the heads we test.
Okay.
So that's into the Dark Speed X. So again, as a head, we can move the weight forwards. It's not, the LS is very low launch and spin, and actually not that forgiving. So I don't want to go to something horribly unforgiving, because then you end up with the good ones are great and the bad ones are horrible.
So what's that? Very unforgiving.
So the LS one of this, definitely, if you a little off centre, drops a little bit of ball speed. But I mean, we may find in order to get the flight, we've got to go there, but I don't think we'll need to. I don't want to lose too much forgiveness off the head.
Okay.
Okay. Again, I'm going to take, that one's much lower spin. Still a little high. I'm going to just take the keep the tee height a little bit lower. That's just strike point.
Okay.
Let's take it down a fraction, but that's taken spin down a lot.
So, but at the end of this, there will be a tee height that I should stick
Yeah, it
to.
does vary a little bit head to head.
Okay.
And as you settle with that angle of attack and as that becomes less conscious, it may vary a fraction. But you know, certainly slightly above centre is better than below centre because it gears spin off. But too high and then you get a dead spot on the head.
So, I mean, should you go, once you sort of know where you are, get a tee where you know exactly, or do the tees do that? Or?
I mean, there are some of the, like the castle tees or some of the tees with the markers on them, where you can then kind of measure the height and know you're at a consistent spot.
Okay.
That's why those castle tees, I mean, this is a short one, but why kind of these ones where they've got that sort of stopper at the bottom, the pink ones are the most used ones. If anyone I have in here, they're always saying, oh, use the pink castle tee. So it means that you know you're the same height each time. So as long as it's right for you, there's value in that for sure.
I remember that used to be like, that's a terrible sign, you couldn't have.
Yeah, but again, it just takes a variable out.
Yeah.
So, but you shouldn't say, oh, I must use that one because that's what other people, it's just, so I would use the equivalent of the white one because my club head's close to the ground on the way through. I still hit up on it, but it's almost brushing the turf on the low point. And then other players need the orange one, which is much higher. And they might have the same angle of attack, but their low point's not as low.
So you use one?
No, but if I was, I'd use the white one.
The white one, interesting.
Okay, ball speed's moving the right way. Flight's moved the right way. So spin now. There's still a bit more ball speed to come, but if I put that on the optimizer for flight, we're now at 2-2 on spin, and because of you're never going to be low launch. You deliver a bit of loft. So sitting on the upper end of the launch window for total here, spins in the lower half. That's still really efficient. If I put it on the carry-in total bit, that is as optimal as you're going to get. Upper mid, lower mid, is great. So we've still got a few miles an hour ball speed to get, but we're now in a much more of what I call like a going ball flight out of that.
And that's strike, is it, in terms of for the ball speed?
So head styles pull the spin down a little bit more. I'm going to, just to change one variable at a time, I'm just going to put another head on.
But where I'm missing that ball speed out of that better one, that is that strike? What that's?
Still slightly above centre, slightly.
Okay.
Not a lot though. But it's a much stronger flight performance now, which is great.
Okay. And in wind, I don't need to worry. Sorry.
We just pause for 1 second.
Of course.
Half-hour mark every time.
Okay. Right. Now we've got some ball speed.
That felt good.
Now we've got some ball speed. So angle of attack the same, pathing's the same. That's just jumped to 152 ball speed. That's picked up 5 miles an hour ball speed.
Okay.
So might not be just a coincidence. This is one of the slightly more compact heads.
Okay.
And this is one where the base loft sits down at 8 rather than 9 and de-lofting it. So, but I think the slightly more compact head, I guess thinking about the physics of it, if you're someone who has an add lofted impact, so i.e. you're delivering the head more that way, the further back the centre of mass, the more that's cutting under and maybe flaring it. If the weight sits further forward, there's less movement in where that CG sits. So the further back it is, the greater the movement. So if you're someone who delivers it under, then that mass is cutting under and popping it a little bit, which is probably why the Callaway didn't work as well. With that one, where the head is a little bit more uniform in terms of it's a all metal head, so it's slightly less exaggerated in weight, and I find the same with me. I deliver a little bit of extra loft, so that head works best for me. Ball speed wise for you, that centre of gravity isn't moving as much, so it's still on the back of the ball. That's just giving you 10 yards.
Okay. Wow. It felt different.
Yeah, and club speed 102.6 is exactly where you've been with the other heads, but the output's gone up by 5 miles an hour, and the flight's a little bit stronger, a little bit lower.
And that's nothing to do with loft, that is just the centre of gravity.
Yeah, because we've been using 9 degrees turned down, and this is an 8 in its standard loft position.
Okay.
Didn't sound as middle, but that's still ball speed. Ball speed still trumps anything else, and the spin's in that stronger window as well. So based on, if we're looking for maximum total distance, and based on the fact that if you're going to go and play links golf as well, we can deal with it. If you're playing in Arizona, we want a higher flight to max carry. But from a total distance point of view, these flights, I go back to that last one, are going to trump a higher ball flight. So total distance, the first shot was absolutely maxed out, 278, and optimal's 277, because the spin sits on the lower end. If I go carry in total, technically on that first shot, the previous shot, there's another 5 yards of carry, but you've trumped the total by 4 yards because it's run further.
Right.
So, and factor in if you're going to go up to Scotland and play in links, and then you don't want to be fighting flight down. With how you deliver it, I'd rather you need to launch it more. You're going to find launching a little higher easier because you can just deliver a little bit more loft. But turning that loft down then brings in the smothery one left.
Okay.
So it'd be interesting to see one more. That's, I think, head-wise, this could be incredibly hard to beat. I'm going to get the couple of other heads that are worth comparing. We'll definitely go back to the other shafts to cross-reference with. But knowing what we've just done with that and the weight positioning, there are a couple of other heads that are worth hitting.
Okay, awesome.
Cobra back, Callaway back. So, going to go into the LS in the QI10, and I'm going to go to the LS in the Ping as well. And those are the two heads that, from a ball speed but flight point of view, have the most relevance. So we've got the TaylorMade, and then the QI10 in the LS, and then the LST in the Ping.
So once you've found your sort of marker that you're trying to baseline, do they all try and compete, or does that put you into a family of sort of heads from that point of view?
You're looking at heads of trying to match those sorts of characteristics. So there's no point in you going to a deep back-weighted head. Knowing what we've seen with that immediately, and the Cobra from a spin point of view, to be fair as well. But there's no point in going to something that spreads a lot of weight back, because we know from what we've seen with that's the differentiating point with that head. And the Cobra allowed us to put weight forward. However, it still has a chunk of weight at the back that we don't really need.
But they're all trying to offer something, as in you wouldn't knock out a brand because of that.
There are some that just don't do it as well. I mean, the Callaway for launch angle is great at creating a little bit more launch angle. That it's more, if we can get that dynamic launch down, we can then get the flight into a neutral launch to spin window. I'd rather do that than something that just gets the spin down but keeps the launch high, because then you risk the one that knuckles. And so the reason I've not pulled the triple diamond Callaway out is that's more of that. So it's a bit more launch but then low spin. For you, if we can pull them both down in sync, it's then a reliable, stable ball flight. Still pretty good ball speed. Okay, it's not bad. So still a good trajectory. Because of the composite face, it'll be quite a different feel to the Titleist.
Okay. Just as in you can feel it, or you can't?
We all feel things differently. So some players like that almost, for want of a better word, almost dullness to it. It tones it down, whereas the slightly, because it's all metal, the slightly higher pitched kind of sound produces. Some players say it's more solid, some play it's tinnier, depending on what you like.
Right, okay.
good. Okay, that's very stable. Okay, we can keep that one ruled in.
So it might get to a stage where one just feels better, but there's not a massive difference.
Yeah, I mean, by the looks of it, between those heads, there's very similar performance. And considering the gain versus where we're starting from, there's a significant gain from both.
Okay.
And it could well become a case of which do you prefer the feel of. If there's a couple of yards in it, a couple of yards versus the 25 odd that we're going to gain,
Yeah.
or certainly 20 that we're going to gain, is quite trivial, based on, you know, if it's lasting 10 years or so, then you want to, you know, what's going to make you look forward to pulling it out the bag a little bit more versus the couple of yards.
And is there a cost factor between, or are they all pretty similar now?
Quite I say quite possibly based on just like overall combos and things for someone, but actually, yeah, from a head point of view, the ones we're looking at, there's not a vast difference. So it's, yeah, with Titleist, because of their structure, there would be, switch that one, yeah. Without our ability to get the heads a certain way to mitigate some of the cost of an aftermarket shaft, they would generally be slightly dearer, but actually then probably end up a hair less than the other two.
Okay.
But there's not an awful lot
material,
in it.
no.
Okay, the LS head, okay, that's the only possible thing. Yeah, this head's just a little bit heavier. So there's only a certain amount of weight I can get out of this one. The frame weight's slightly heavier.
So this is just an LST version of the same thing we started with, yeah.
So weight quite noticeably further forward. Actually, loft relative to stated loft is a little bit lower as well.
Okay.
But should bring the spin down as well.
Yeah.
So based on how the others performed, ball speed's fine, but I can immediately get rid of that. Spins high.
Really?
Yeah, it's up at 3.
Wow.
So it's a good hit.
Yeah.
Spins up at 3,000. So
wow, it's
with
that. Okay, wow.
the others being noticeably less.
Interesting.
Very stable, very straight. Launch angle's good, just not as good on spin as the others. So I'm gonna.
Wow, I would never have thought you could rule something out that.
Because it was
Very
a
quickly.
decent hit as well, very square face. We know it's not your action having done something funky. Neither of the other two got close to that spin, so they were both better.
Okay.
So I'm gonna, with these, I just want to cross-reference the other shafts. Having that one swings well, having swung it a few times, that clearly gets down the line well. Let's just go back over to these other couple.
No, it just came up.
Okay, I'll watch
Not a
one
great
more
hit.
of that. But
Yeah. So with a little high, little toe, I should be aiming right side of fairway, just from a typically.
it's going to
safety,
create a
assuming there's
little
not
bit of a
rubbish.
draw bar gearing, a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's not massively toe side, but if you kind of take the head, it's sort of just toe side and a little bit above centre.
But I should aim right of trouble. as in
Yeah,
terms
yeah,
of-
and your pattern is that little bit of a draw
Yeah.
there. So yeah. Okay, so ball speed wise, again, this head's still slightly better. That's turning over on you a little bit more. So the path's great, but that's letting you shut the face a little bit more.
Okay.
Flight's good. Again, if you're looking just from a trajectory point of view and a distance and everything, that's in a good place. But the face is closing another couple of degrees. So
And if I was looking to carry more and not so worry about total, would it change or not massively?
I'll just bring the loft up a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit, but I mean, the carry side doesn't, if I got like that one from an optimal point of view, carry in total, it's actually that one, if you got the flight up a little bit more and a little less draw, would carry 10 yards more, but you've made it up in run out. So you just lift the flight up a little bit more if your focus was carry distance.
Okay.
But again, you wouldn't want the proportions to change much in terms of launch and spin. But yeah, just a little bit more height just gives it a bit more distance through the air.
Okay, so if I was going suddenly to play in America, you would want, or not really?
Because we're talking about, you know, when it's neutral shot shape and well hit, we're looking at such, relatively speaking, small differences. You're probably changing for change's sake.
Okay.
Because it's not like you're giving up very much. If I take, you know, that first hit with the TSR3, you know, we're saying, okay, if I optimize that from a maximum carry point of view, you're looking at less than 5 yards.
Yeah.
Because it's hit so well, yes, relative to that, the flight's a little on the lower side, but because it's in such an efficient place, and if you were lower ball speed, it would have a greater difference. Okay. That's the thing I will say, actually. So where you're up at 100 miles an hour plus, you know, where, you know, carry in total is a mixture. There's 4 yards in it, but you're getting extra run out. So for a UK flight, we use the ground more because of the turf conditions. That's a bit more efficient. You're not losing enough carry to mess around with it. Okay. And you could probably do it with just feeling like you're launching at a fraction more. You can gain it by doing that. But I wouldn't be thinking, right, let's change the setup because you're going to play in the States. Okay. I think you risk losing the stability of flight in wind and losing what you're used to seeing and therefore playing around with it too much.
Right. Okay.
So what's quite interesting between the two shafts, your initial miss with the Ventus was big time left, having been swinging the other shaft. That one is definitely not left. So just a little bit of a shift in dynamics. That dropped in a little bit more. So slight toe strike, slightly open face, cancel one another out. And that's created the slightly higher flight that's got your carry, but because the spin stayed low, it still ran out pretty well. Okay. So if we're looking at saying, okay, well, can the club lose a little bit of a tendency to miss left? In principle, this might do it a little bit more. The danger is that if you start to miss it right, then you try and square it, and then it creates a left. So there's always a balance there. There's always a caveat to it, but that dropped in a little bit more, so opens the face up a little bit more in the downswing. Okay.
The caveat being the user.
Yeah, the human will react to it. So if you see a ball go right, for some players it's like, great, I can commit to it, and they don't change their kind of release pattern. Others will then try and square it with the hands, and that can bring in a snipe left. So there's always a...
And all standards of player will react, even though they don't think they're doing it, they are.
Yeah, we'll all react. So some players are very visual and will really react to what they see. Even in here, see a flight go left, and the next one you can see them hold the face open. And you get other players that just carry on hitting, nothing changes. Right. So yeah, just depending on how the player
reacts to
what's gone on before. Yeah.
Interesting.
Damn humans. Yeah, it's interesting in that I think with that you're having to work the bottom end a little bit more. So a toe strike actually saved that shot. Okay. So it went 2 degrees open, 5 degrees closed. But you could see that you worked it a little bit more. So you're going to go back to that UB. And so for a player who can maneuver and generally does maneuver the face, the last thing you want you to have to do is to square the face, to get the face square in fact. Because
for a good shot.
Yeah, to get it, we don't want you to have to get it square, we want it to just arrive square. So for someone who does manipulate the face, which you do, we don't want you to have to, because you'll just overdo it the whole time.
Okay. And which number is telling you that in terms? Is it
the fact that the path square, and that from the first one was 2 degrees open, and then the next one's gone 5 degrees closed, but it could see you having to wrench it, a little bit of separation at the bottom end and collect with the hands.
Okay. So I did that at the end without knowing you're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how quickly our body responds. You'll notice as you start down, you'll feel the club getting behind you a little bit, and then there'll be a reaction to get it back. So it's normally on the second or the third swing, because the first one's just, right, let's see what happens. And then you'll, subconsciously, this is all working out, right, well, that went to there, how do I level that off? How do I make a balanced move through?
Okay.
Subconsciously, you'll just react to try to get that face squarer. And so some players do it very, very quickly, others it takes a few swings.
But yeah, everyone
will find a way. But the whole idea of this is that you don't have to, that the club finds the way of squaring it rather than you having to get it square. And that's where the real little nuances of dead weight and balance point in the shafts make one just better more regularly, because with the build-up of forces and levers, it's arriving at the right time. So you're not having to find square with the club face or manage it, you're just turning through and collecting the ball. And those are the ones where the margins come right in.
So more consistency.
Yeah. So you stay more balanced because you're not having to catapult the head through or steer it and save it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just better straight away. Yeah, we've gone from, say, 2 open, 5 closed. That you can see you just move through. So the green one, where you could see it, well, we could see as you came through it dropped under a little more, so the face stayed open. And that's where then the next one has that catapult and fetch. The Ventus got through the ball a little soon, so the next one you're going to be holding it off and steering it. That one looked like you just turned through and collected it. So straight away we're back at 12.5 launch, 2-1 on spin, 250 carry, 278 total, 151 ball speed. It just cleaner move through the ball. You're not having to find the contact point. It's there for you when you get there.
Okay. So and when we take that back to what I started with, it's just
4 or 5 grams lighter. Balance point slightly further down the shaft. But yeah, a few grams lighter, so the handle end's coming with you, and then we're using the balance point in the shaft to find that squaring point, rather than you having to collect it and get the club on the back of the ball.
But even with this shaft and that old one,
still going to go high.
It's still going high. Yeah.
So we're at an 8-degree head rather than the 10.5. But that's where your 10.5 was regimentally launching at 16, and we're now down. So a little bit of that loft has come off because you can now lead the handle through and square the face off rather than collect and fetch. So there's a little bit of add loft from the fetch, but we're going from a 16-degree launch to a 12.5, 13-degree launch. So the spin's gone from basically 3,000 to 2,000.
Okay.
But you're still hitting up in it 2.5, 3 degrees. Yeah, and slightly higher on the face, but those two swings, we think how variable the two with the previous one were. 7 degrees difference on the face. Face to path 2.5, face to path 2.4, path 0.2, path 0.2. So you've put the club in exactly the same spot. The last one got a little higher up the face, so you lost a bit of ball speed, launched a bit higher, but has tracked down exactly the same shot pattern. That's just strike point that's created a bit of variability, which that means that we can deal with because you're hitting the same channel of shots. I'm going to pop the TaylorMade head on this shaft again to compare.
So T height wise, I should be going...
You don't need a high T, even though you do hit up in it a few degrees. You're like me in that your low point basically is low to the ground.
Okay.
So, 2 or 3 sounds a lot, and if that's flat, 2 or 3 degrees is that. It's minimal in terms of how much up you're hitting. So you don't have to tee it 2 inches up in the air because that still catches too high up the face. So, tee height is only relevant, too high or too low is only relevant to how high above the ground is your club head at impact. And if you go too high or too low, then you've got to shift your delivery to find the middle of the face. and that just then leads to variability of the club
So
pitch.
because the way I swing, if I have a big high tee, I'll just
It'll catch high on the face.
Yeah.
Or you've then got to then back off it to lift the club head up from where your natural plane, and then you're going to lose consistency.
Okay.
So the old tee at high, let it fly adage, and that lovely marker on the tee of the long drive hole, it's all relative to the player. Yes, proportionally higher tee allows you to sweep up on it, but my high tee, like James needs, I used to joke, he needs planning permission going on the course. He used to have to tee it kind of that high, whereas I'd go under the ball teeing it that high.
Okay. But as in people messing around with tee heights can make a difference depending how they...
Oh, massive. There's a video we did on it.
Yeah.
It can hugely affect, like ball speeds just dropped 7 miles an hour on you there from catching a bit high up the face.
Okay.
But because the shaft's swinging well, it's in play.
Right. Yeah.
It's just,
and then it's up to me
just
to...
looped a little bit, and it's just little fine tunes on tee height to optimize strike. Just take that tee height down a little bit more. And what you might find, the more trust you get in the club, you might find need to pull the tee height down a bit, because the more you extend, you get a little bit deeper down, the bottom of the arc deepens a little bit, potentially.
Okay.
So same thing there, of same face, very similar face orientation, similar little high, centered but a little high up the face. Hence just pulling that tee height down a little.
So knowing that I'm tendency to hit high, how do I, because I find it hard to know.
So one is to get, you can get some sort of stickers, the kind of the ones that leave a contact point mark. We use them for, like you're looking at bounce, or you can get the kind of the face stickers that can show you the dimple marks, the strike point, or a bit of athlete's foot spray, a powder spray, and then spray at the face, hit, and it'll again leave you the same mark. The only thing with the athlete's foot, you've got to clean it off afterwards, whereas a sticker will, you can just peel it off. You don't have to wash it off. But that's a really good way of seeing where the strike point is.
And then hopefully after enough times you'll
just trying different tee heights, just saying, right, where's too low, where's too high, and it is a bit of the Goldilocks thing of too hot, too cold, just right. But you will start to feel it on course. The more used to the head you get, you'll start to know what feel is a bit higher, a bit low, and you'll be able to dial it in on course.
Okay.
You'll feel a kind of a high point is a bit dead and will loop up a little more, so you can relate the ball flight to the strike point as well.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah.
Still marked. So with this shaft, very, very consistent shot pattern. That's still slight. I'll see one more. That's still slightly above centre.
I'll try to take it down or just leave it?
I'll see one more with it as it is. So there's, if I'm looking at, I'll just pull out the strike point on this. As we can see, this is with the TaylorMade head you've got there.
Yeah.
It's well centered in terms of strike point. It's that little bit more up the face. With the Titleist, it's not getting up the face quite as much. There's a slightly better heat map of strike. Whereas that one's spreading up the face a little, even though the tee height's been the same on both.
Okay.
So what that's meaning is, we go to the numbers, 149.5 average with the Titleist. You've actually got 0.2 of a mile an hour more club speed with the TaylorMade.
Okay.
But ball speed is a mile an hour and a half less. Flight, 12.5 to 2,100, 12.9, just under 2,050. I mean, we're nitpicking here. Based on where we started, 16 and 3,000. We're still looking at at a vastly, again I'm going to put it on that, I put it on total, a vastly more efficient flight with both of them. They're both in really good places.
So the Titleist definitely felt better, but similarly, if I got that strike down, it would feel...
Well, my suspicion with that is because with the TaylorMade you've got the composite crown, composite face, composite centre, that the sweet spot is a little bit deeper down the head, with your tendency to get up the face on the contact. Are you going to find it harder to, are we finding centre contact in that because the centre of mass is in a better space for you?
Okay.
Yeah, we don't want to start teeing it really low because that could start to get you going down to get it.
Okay.
But we're also seeing with the Titleist a little bit more ball speed. I mean, when there's no loss in flight efficiency, but we're finding 4 yards more because you're getting more efficiency out of it. So I'll put it back on. I think for me, it's a case of you're more naturally finding strike point out of the Titleist head. I think you've got to find it a bit more out of the TaylorMade. But I think that's also where the Titleist will feel a bit more solid because it's just more naturally getting into the right bit of the head for you. Yeah, a little more compact in terms of head. Well, only a few cc's.
Nothing.
Yeah, from a construction point of view, it's less far removed from what you're used to. So if you go back to the kind of question earlier about the blades question, it is a more similar construction to the head that you're used to hitting. Therefore, the feel is going to be a little bit more solid versus duller because of the composites. So that might be a feel that's just a more familiar, therefore a better feel, possibly. I mean, that's very spurious. It might be
we are getting into that position where those sort of metrics are...
Yeah, it then becomes a factor. However, on raw numbers, this is producing better data as well.
Okay.
Just maybe moved off that a little bit. Yeah, that one looked like just moved. It's quite interesting actually for numbers. It looked like just moved back off and then rolled around. However, go back to it, we're naturally back at a better ball speed straight away. So yeah, okay, it went left a little bit, but we're back over 150 from a ball speed point of view. Just looked like he moved off that a little bit in the backswing. Yeah, lovely swing. A really good line through that. Yeah, so that's probably one that's a little bit, again, a little bit above centre. In comparison wise, 147, 1700, 143, 147, 148. There's, just looking at the drop off, it's not quite as knuckly on spin. The one that was noticeably a little higher on the face dropped off a little bit more. There's potentially, if you get it a bit high on the face, there's probably not an awful lot in it. However, we still went back to it and saw better ball speed, even on one that you misaligned a little bit. I think you're going to dial in strike with that better because I think there's more of a natural feedback to know where the strike point is. So they're both going to work really well. Put it this way, if you're a TaylorMade guy, then that would be the one you'd go with. I think the feel, based on where the rest of your bag is, that's going to feel more like a natural progression from the kind of feedback on the irons. Whereas I use the term dullness, the way the composite dampens down the sound and the vibration a little bit, there's a little less feedback on it. But I think you'll respond to the feedback a bit more off that. And the longest hits have been with that as well.
Okay. I mean, that felt a bit like the start of the conversation of, I don't feel I get anything out of them. Whereas that one, okay, I know I've been a bit high in all of them. There's been a couple of that where it's felt
I mean,
much better.
That first one in particular was to coin the old phrase, that was right out the screws. For those that don't know, screws, faces used to be kept on persimmon wooden woods with screws, hence the term right out the screws. That's old ones talk about like that. But that one, straight out the gate, that's your contact, and I think you're going to know that strike more directly, and therefore dial that in a little bit more directly. But the Titleist head giving the best results.
Brilliant.
And then, so the UB graphite design shaft is very, very similar in structure to, it's a kind of modern DI. It's a fraction lighter than the DI, but we found it very, very good for spin. So it's good at keeping the spin down without being harsh feeling. There's a little bit of load through the center, but nice and stable in the tip section. Been very, very good for that spin profile, but the DI is a fraction heavier, which is why I didn't go to that one to test out.
Right, okay.
And you know, the added benefit is it's blue. So it goes with the heritage. Yeah. So driver-wise, yeah, it's a few factors. Lower loft. Actually, your structure of head not wildly dissimilar, but absolutely the lower loft's a massive key. Losing 4 or 5 grams in the shaft, slightly lower balance point to counter the lighter weight to keep the club dropping into plane.
Okay.
But the head structure and the loft just keeping that launch and spin in a much stronger window, and
Awesome.
without filtering any funky shots out. On average, we're going from 250 to 275. So there is that 25 yards you requested from me earlier on.
Awesome. But now the bill.
I'll come on to that bit next, but yeah.
Well, no, that's, yeah.
But yeah, it's I think.
And swing-wise, there's no difference.
No, I think 2.7 up, path really, really neutral. Face, yeah, there's a tendency just to overclose a little bit, but that's the kind of thing where when you're not having to find contact point, then your hands will start to leave the face online. You know, there are a couple that have gone a little further left, but most, it's a very, very tight pattern of slight, you could argue, slight pull draw because the face is just closing a little bit, but it's marginal. You can go back to the start point, we're seeing a little more out to in. Face to path, very similar, angle of attack the same, but the balance is letting you to drop it onto line more. So it's starting sort of very close to aim line and drawing off it rather than starting left and drawing over, and then you're having to manage it. This you can just turn through it and say aim right, center, and just hit.
And as
Square
long
on
as
the face,
my
stays
job,
right side
yeah.
of the fairway, slight over draw, so left edge of the fairway, but it's in a very, very consistent pattern of shot. So the weight change is helping you orient the path more on line, but without the loft change, we're never getting the distance. So
Okay.
yeah, so good change.
Awesome.
So in summary, I mean, in this case where we've got a driver that's 10 years plus old, similar to what I found with my own one, is that when it's the wrong loft as well, loft's the one bit that really gets the potential up. If this were a 8.5 degree, we'd be achieving less, just more consistency across the face.
Okay.
But the lower loft allows us to make the flight so much more efficient, and then changing the dynamics of the shaft by a little bit helps the timing improve. So helps make more consistent the delivery, but get the flight naturally into a good window rather than you having to get it into.
And I've not done anything different in terms of
you can
swing-wise.
just stand and deliver. Yeah. Same angle of attack,
Awesome.
same face to path. The path's squared up with the slight weight change, but kind of the tech changes off center. We'll lose a little bit less ball speed, and the spin will stay a bit more stable. You'll be hitting about 3 clubs less than the greens, which is quite nice.
Fantastic.
So we can't promise those kind of gains for everybody. Obviously, if a driver is, in this case, an inappropriate loft, that creates the real potential for gain. But if you've liked what you've seen, we've done a couple of videos with Graeme now, and your channel is, you have your own?
It's Golfing Focus, so it's just, as in, it's great for the expertise with yourself, as in, we've learned a bit of trying to share in our channel of launch stuff, but that translation from yourself just makes that such a massive difference.
Yeah. So if you like what you've seen, like, subscribe, both channels. We'll continue to try and provide all the content you want to see. And so thanks again for watching, hit the like button, and we'll see you soon.